Should we still be following the Ten Commandments as they are written? My answer to that question is no. And the reason I feel the way I do about it goes back to a couple of reasons. First reason being, the Ten Commandments were tied to the people along with a ton of other laws and a ton of other ceremonial laws in a covenant, in a blood pact between the people and God. They sacrificed an animal. Moses sprinkled the blood on the people. They said they would do what God said, and then they burned the animal, and thus the incense went up to God of the burning flesh, and that was the covenant sealed with the people and God to do not only the Ten Commandments, but all of the moral law, all of the ceremonial laws that were tied to that. So that means high priest, that means certain feast days, that means certain rituals, certain rites, certain things, certain places you can go, when you can leave a house, all those things, right? That is a package deal. Through Christ, we do not have to follow the ceremonial side of things because we no longer need animals to cover our sin now that Christ has come. Most of the ceremonial laws of the old covenant were surrounding sacrifice, were surrounding covering your sin with animals, what type of animal to use, when to use it, how to kill it, what to do with all the pieces of it. Most of those laws encompass the proper way for people to be cleansed or covered in front of God from their sin. But upon accepting Jesus' resurrection and his sacrifice and becoming saved, at that point, you no longer need to do any animal sacrifices. So that means the package deal that was the Ten Commandments and the ceremonial laws is no longer applicable to people who are saved through Christ. The beautiful thing about the old and the new covenant is they both cover all of the same categories. There is a sacrifice. There are ceremonial things that have to be done. There are moral things that you are obligated to follow. And if you read the language of the Old Testament versus the New Testament, you could definitely see where that change occurred. One of the most important ceremonies, especially feast-wise, was the Feast of Passover. And that was to commemorate God bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. In the New Testament, you see Jesus telling his disciples to do the Passover in remembrance of him. No longer in the remembrance of God bringing you out of Egypt, but in remembrance of me, my sacrifice that I'm about to do. This is my body. This is my blood. No longer is it tied or meant to commemorate us coming out of Egypt, because now I'm bringing you out of bondage of sin permanently. We all talk about the Ten Commandments and how strong they are as moral laws. And Jesus also gave two laws that encompassed all 10. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, which is the first. And then the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. That covers the 10 because you won't be jealous of your neighbor if you love your neighbor as yourself. You won't want to kill your neighbor if you love your neighbor as yourself. You won't steal from them, so on and so forth. You can literally go down the list and it covers everything. And then in loving the Lord your God, that's no longer being servitude to him out of obligation, but now it's out of thankfulness. Now it's out of the care and the love that he has saved you. He has allowed you to be saved. And in that, understanding the mercy that he had on you throughout your time of being lost. And then, of course, it's the sacrifice, right? Jesus was the sacrifice for the new covenant. The old covenant had multiple iterations of sacrifices over the tenure of it being created and sustained that would cover the people in their time of sin. And it goes to show how God hasn't changed, just the approach that we have to honor the things that God wants us to do has changed. We still have rules and laws. We still have ceremonies that we perform. And we also have still gotten a sacrifice to cover us. And in this sense, it is the perfect sacrifice that doesn't need to be slain on a regular basis because Jesus's death was enough to cover everything. The last piece I'll say on this is you cannot tie Jesus's sacrifice to the old covenant in any way. If you're following strictly the 10 Commandments, you have to follow those 10 Commandments and the ceremonies that went with those 10 Commandments. You can't pull a piece of a contract and then add a piece of another contract and say that those two make its own thing. Or you can't pull language from one contract and impose it on another and say that that first contract is not void, but the second one is. If you are following the Old Testament laws as your way of salvation, then Jesus's salvation is no longer being applied to you because you are refusing the perfect sacrifice in lieu of animal sacrifice, and you should still be sacrificing animals. And the same goes for if you are accepting of Jesus' sacrifice, then you should also be accepting of the new rules and the new covenant that has been made in order for you to accept that sacrifice. You see that confirmed throughout the New Testament in multiple ways. All that to say, at the end of the day, if you want to follow the 10 Commandments as a way to be more specific in how you serve God, do that. There's nothing saying that you can't be more strict on yourself if you feel that you need that. But to say that that is the requirement and to say that that is the way to redemption, and that completely voids Jesus out of the equation, and that's not biblical.